Well, hello, welcome. Thank you all for joining another Advertising Matters Views from the Frontline. It has been a long time since I got so many out of offices or OOOs, so we must be back in some shape or form that people are taking holidays. Not only taking holidays from the office, but they're taking holidays from their homes. So let's see how we go. We are due to be back next week because it's a weekly series, but we may stall it till the following week. I know we have the MD of Mazda Ireland, um, and we want to talk about the most important people in the jigsaw, which is advertisers. And maybe I'll be able to twist Barry Dooley's arm yet of the Association of Advertisers, because I know he's on there. A bit of public blackmail, Barry, to come on. I'll rattle through some housekeeping just very quickly. I'm always asked this. No, we do not record you, we record us. And if you're interested, you can go to YouTube and you'll see the recording, or if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see it on my LinkedIn feed normally this afternoon. So we'll get it out then and you can see it. So we can see you. You can relax, watch, listen, and hopefully find it of use to you. Paul, you at the end as usual. Feedback has always been good. Thanks very much indeed, and we appreciate that. But I'd say this week just seems to be a bit peculiar. There seems to be a lot of people out of the office, and at the moment we've 30 people viewing, which is slightly down, but it will grow as time goes on. I always say it seriously that if I can help you or your business, do not hesitate. I was there in the crash of 2010, as a lot of people will know. So if you want to just touch base with me, please do. And if you're doing something you want to get a mention on up here or in the recording, I'm very happy to do so. And obviously, if you want advertising video or webinars, I'll buy you lunch. I live in Dalkey, and it's great to see restaurants starting to reopen on Thursday. They're the restaurants that none of us can afford to go into, but dinner at 2 meters will be interesting. I'm Stuart Fogarty of Admatic Ad Tech, Streambet the video agency, and AFA Mara Advertising. And my job here is just to moderate the discussion, try and keep it going, and to try and keep it good, and to try and keep it positive. We build self-op media platforms for booking engines for media. We do video, and thank God AFA Omara has been quiet, and so has video for 12 weeks. And last week and this week, surprisingly, we're starting to see a bit of green shoots. And I'm afraid to say it because it's kind of tempting fate, but that is a bit of good news, because advertising and video and stuff is at the front line a bit, and when it gets turned on, things start to happen. And I would have to say, in talking to people like Jane and talking to people like Mick and John, there seems to be a sense of that. It's the first time we've sensed it since we started doing these. It's appreciated that you're here. Really hope it's a benefit, but thanks. It will be over in 1 hour. I'm again in the advertising jungle in our offices here. Stu the Exotic, as I'm known, but Carol Baskin, any of you who follow the Netflix series, Carol Baskin actually got possession of Joe the Exotic's zoo yesterday. So not only am I very cool, I'm also very topical. Not joining us this week is Siobhan O'Connell. She will be back next week because she's trying to get the magazine Business Plus out to the printer, worth buying. But we are, IMJ and AdWorld are here, obviously, supporting these sessions from the very start. It wouldn't happen without this great support of John McGee. Our Jack to his close friends, who was born on March the 3rd, which is the same day as my son, who is also a Jack. Mind you, there's 100 years in the difference. John McGee is the CEO of Irish Marketing Journal, and of course the fabulous adworld.ie. And I say it every week, if you're not subscribing to it and you want to know what's going on in the ad business, it's free. Go out and subscribe to it. It is worth getting. It is the one piece of communication that is sought out by the ad business every single week. He also writes a marketing story for the Sunday Independent, and one of the great advertising supporters. Jack will just simply contribute as we go along, and anybody who's been on before will be used to it. Our 3 guests this week are Luke Reaper, who's the MD at Behaviour and Attitudes Research, and probably the most aligned research group in advertising for as long as I've been in it. And has done some interesting work on consumer behavior on brands during the epidemic, and we'll talk about that later. Jane McDade is the founder of ThinkHouse and the head of creative innovation in what is very much a youth-focused business. I have to be honest with you, I was more than blown away by where ThinkHouse is right now. It's way past than I expected or anticipated, in a really, really good way and a really positive way, and we'll talk about that. Mick McCaffrey is the head of news, and as I said last week, the head of No Sport on Virgin Media Television. And we talk about how difficult it's been for news gathering during the COVID, and also about the return of sport, which I think might be back a little bit on Friday. I can only imagine what that has been. I also want to just quickly talk about the USA protests and what's going on there, because, as I say, a lot of our guys here are news, and as a consequence of that, I'm just astonished. So it's something I want to talk about, not necessarily we all want to talk about, but you're very welcome, one and all. So first, if I could turn to Luke Reaper, how are things at Behaviour and Attitudes, and tell us about what's going on and what you're seeing.
Yeah, sure. Well, I suppose like everyone, it's been a challenging time for all agencies and most clients. I suppose our last day in the office was Friday the 13th of March. Seems like light years away, but it was around 12 weeks ago. So we all moved, all 41 of us moved remotely, remote working, and has panned out fantastic. We're doing a lot more of this, a lot more webinars. We were already talking about it earlier on, about the sharing of information and collaboration with various agencies and that, which I thought has been fantastic at that. Like all, I suppose, agencies, I suppose our face-to-face work stopped on the 14th of March. So it was a process of migration of work, research and insights to, I suppose, other platforms, digital platforms, telephone platforms, a lot of which we're using anyway already in that. So that was sort of phase one and that. And I suppose just putting my AMRO hat on, being chairperson of AMRO, we will be reopening for face-to-face business in terms of qualitative work and indeed face-to-face work from the 20th of July. So that'll be all AMRO agencies will be open in terms of that, as well as all the other platforms that we're obviously using at the moment as well. And that, I suppose the second phase really was, I suppose, looking at the current situation and almost like not in a bizarre way, but it's probably one of the greatest social experiments,
Yeah.
notwithstanding one of the greatest catastrophes ever to face Ireland. But it's as a researcher, it's been fascinating in a bizarre way. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to, and certainly in B&A, we wanted to look at, I suppose, how people were dealing with the crisis, you know, how they were reorganizing their lives, what were their emerging needs. And we set up a various different studies, which some of our clients bought into, and some were actually free for the community to, again, in the spirit of collaboration and to share with the fraternity. I suppose one was the Life and Lockdown Diaries, which was, we're into week 10 of that, which was a sort of an R&D project whereby we recruited people from various walks of life all around Ireland, and we did perform digital ethnography, a digital qual with them, to look at how they're adjusting their lives in this current crisis and that. And this is our last week. I think John's carrying it tomorrow, but we're actually going to evolve that, bit of a scoop for you, John, into a new study to look at people when they emerge into the wild again, and they re-engage with the world. You know, what are the needs? What are the desires? And it'll be a sort of a consumer and an expert sort of a panel that we will have, and we'll call it sort of shaping the future of Ireland, and that. So that'll be sort of poised, and we'll hope maybe that you might carry that from the 15th of June. And that we've done a lot of multi-country studies as well in terms of COVID, in terms of tracking, in terms of sentiment, business sentiment. We partnered with the MII as well into an employee well-being study, which was a free study in terms of we would analyze and give access to a platform in terms of people could survey their employees as well. And we'll do a study on the aggregated findings of that. And we launched various studies like Techscape and which looked at technology across the various life stage and generations as well, to keep a finger on the pulse of that, you know. But a lot of work was very COVID related. The interesting thing now, and we talked a little bit about green shoots coming through, it's about, I suppose, reopening Ireland, rebooting certain categories and areas and that, be it public transport, be it, I suppose, you know, understanding, I suppose, media viewing, be it, you know, in terms of the retail environment. And people are really thirsty for understanding, I suppose, of people's needs and what they're going to do next, you know, and that. So we're doing a lot of that, a lot of brand planning sessions, a lot of work in terms of tracking consumer sentiment, and a lot of tracking studies continued over the course of the lockdown, which is kind of interesting. But we molded those to find out and get a finger on the pulse of what are people doing at home. So classic things like people doing Zoom conferences, Zoom drinks, you know, and so forth and that. I think the Zoom drinks might be on the way out, but you know, this might continue. But I think, you
Not
know,
in our house, Luke.
well, we'll see. So there's a lot more streaming and other things, and I know we'll get onto that a little bit later on. So it's interesting, some green shoots coming through now, which is great.
And tell me commercially as well, is the market soft or is it strong? I mean, I'm talking about commercial projects as much as anything else. How is it well down, or what's the kind of sense?
Yeah, it sort of breaks into two zones. One is sort of the continuous work, ongoing work, tracking work, and that's been pretty stable, which is fantastic. More the ad hoc, you know, projects sort of softened, on that. So there'll be a divide depending on where the business is, I'd imagine, overall on that. So that's softened. That's where I'm saying the green shoots are starting to come back a little bit. More tentative inquiries, certainly more proposals in the last 2 weeks. In the first 2 weeks of it, dried up. With everybody else. Anybody who says any different, but they're starting to come back. People are starting to plan again, which is great. And it's great to see like outdoor advertising bits and pieces coming back out there at the moment, because that gives a bit of life. And that's why we're actually opening our office on the 8th of June, albeit with a skeleton staff, and obviously continue remote working as well. Just give it that sense of momentum as well back to the business.
And so you might feel a bit more optimistic than you have felt maybe over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's green shoots.
Green shoots,
it's not back to those are the levels.
Well, green shoots are better than no shoots, so absolutely. Okay, well, thanks very much indeed, Luke. So, Mick, can I turn to you? What's going on in the world of news and sport? And also, if you can just talk about how news gathering has happened, and because I think it has implications for the future in terms of pooling and stuff like that. But how news gathering has happened during COVID, it must have been horrendous.
Yeah, there's a big contrast between news and sport. We all know we haven't had live sport for 3 months, and when you have a sports channel, it's very difficult. So the team have had to come up with novel ways of keeping content alive, and they've done that very creatively. In terms of news, we've never been busier. It's the biggest story I've certainly seen in my career, and I don't think any of us will ever see a bigger story. We've totally changed what we do. We have standard morning would see a reporter come into the office, speak to the news editor, be given a story, do some research, meet the camera operator, and go on the road. That hasn't happened in 13 weeks now. We have 4 dedicated office reporters. Everybody else is out on the road. So, that's obviously presented big challenges. Our news editor used to commute from Kilkenny every morning up to the office in heavy traffic. He hasn't been in 13 weeks, and you don't notice a difference. So I'm not sure we're ever going to go back to the way things were. I don't see the need to come through rush hour traffic only to be sent out again. Obviously, there's challenges for reporters as well, because they have to maintain social distancing, wear face masks, and work in close proximity with a camera operator, as well as interview people as well. So, there's been a lot of challenges, but not least of all in the office as well. I'm here in the office, and we just had news at 12:30, and ordinarily we'd have around 30 people in the newsroom. I counted 10 today. We have split the whole newsroom into teams so that teams never meet. So in case one group gets sick, the other one's still available to work, because, at the end of the day, we have to bring people the latest news and information. So we're very conscious of having healthy teams. Our anchor, Colette Fitzpatrick, she now comes into the office at 11 o'clock, does her own hair and makeup, does the news, goes home, comes back at 4 o'clock for news at 5:30. So, we've changed things very, very quickly. But, we've also done strange things which we wouldn't necessarily used to have done. We've extended our news at 5:30 bulletin for the last 7 weeks to 6:30. So we have the daily Department of Health press conference on at 5:30, 5:45. And we found there was a huge demand from our viewers to actually see this. So what we do now is every day we take it live. We go to 6:30. You never would have scheduled anything in news related against 6-1 before, but all bets are off now, and the amount of people watching between 6 and 6:30 is absolutely fantastic. It's almost become, an appointment to view. I speak to my colleagues in newspapers, and they talk about a COVID fatigue after a couple of weeks, COVID fatigue among readers. We don't actually have that in television. It's the opposite's true, actually. There's really interesting weekly survey from Morrick Research through the HSC published every week about all things COVID related. The last few weeks has seen 41% of respondents getting their news and information from Virgin Media Television. That's second only to RTE, and you'd expect the national broadcaster to be the go-to place at times like this. But our figures have never been better. We had a record 310,000 people watching our news at 5:30. That's our flagship bulletin. Figures in thousands are up 70% year on year. Over 3 million people have watched our news and current affairs over the last 12 weeks. So it's been really, really busy. And you contrast that with sport. Last Saturday was meant to be the Champions League final in Istanbul. That's a huge event for advertisers. Last year, we had 700,000 tuning in for Liverpool against Spurs. Obviously, that wasn't there. So the team have been coming up with clever ideas of, how to keep content, because viewers really, really want sport. It's not live sport, but sport nonetheless. Last weekend, we had a teamed weekend of classic Champions League finals. So you could tune in from matches going back to 1968, Manchester United. Yeah. So, really clever way of doing things. creatively and differently. But it's great that there's actually light at the end of the tunnel. Live sport comes back to Virgin Media 1 on Friday. There's horse racing from Epsom behind closed doors. We're going to have
Nobody
10.
watches horse racing, Mick.
Oh, they do actually. They do, yeah. We'd have around 80 to 100,000 watching on Virgin Media 1. And look, it's horse racing's back. We the Bundesliga starting back. The Premier League will kick off in this day 2 weeks' time. So, there's light at the end of the tunnel. And I think we're going to see a lot of live sport later on in the year, albeit behind closed doors.
Behind closed doors. So that is kind of the sense, the way sport is coming back. It is behind closed doors, is it?
No, 100%, yeah. Probably for the rest of the year, yeah.
Probably for the rest of the year. Okay. All right. Great. Well, look, thank you very much indeed. So, Jane, how is the world of Think House, the youth market? And maybe just explain a little bit about Think House. I know you're very youth focused, but also the two things that I took away, maybe to talk about the RTE campaign and indeed Barry's Tea, which kind of took me out. The Barry's Tea commercial, by the way, I thought was fantastic. And separate to this, a couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago, probably now, I actually put it up on LinkedIn because I thought it was so great, not knowing who did it. But maybe just give us a view about how things are going on in Think House.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Stuart. Very serendipitous, actually. The ad is about two sisters keeping in contact with each other, one in Ireland, one in New York, through phones. So remarkably suitable for the times that we find ourselves in. But look, everything is good. It's challenging, I think, like the rest of the industry. For some of our clients are, finding it really, really tough at the moment, commercially hit really, really hard. And then some of our clients are experiencing growth. So we do have a really mixed bag of performance from our client. The whole agency is working from home. Ultimately, I guess what we reminded ourselves of day one when all of this happened is that we have to be committed to being useful. So useful to our team, useful to our clients, useful to our industry, and useful to young people as well. So with our team from day one, we have a wellbeing program in place for our staff. So it was really about doubling down on that, making sure that everybody had support from a mental perspective and mental health perspective, and access to different ways of thinking through systems thinking, nutrition and support around that, and general well-being as well. So that was something really, really important. We implemented a buddy system for our staff with immediate effect as well, and then developed ways of working that were more flexible, based on trust and based on a mindset of supporting each other. So it's not just what we're doing for our team, it's also what the team is doing for Think House, I think has been really amazing over the last 12 weeks. And also then for our clients, a bit like Luke described, making sure that we're there serving up insights, helping them understand how young people feel, and not just how young people feel in isolation. The most important part of it is, how do their views contrast with or change from the views of the wider demographic as well. So supporting our clients with guidance, with responses, obviously, and really active from a creative team perspective, from a PR perspective, in how our brands are showing up. And then supplying our clients with daily updates, so daily insights on what's happening around the world and locally in Ireland as well, and then tailoring those insights for our clients within their own business world as well, and being there for our clients as well. And then within our industry, staying connected to other agency leaders, other agencies that we work in partnership and supporting each other. And I think there's been a remarkable camaraderie shown, certainly from my own experience between the agencies that we've connected with, sharing insights, so making the youth culture insights that we have available to the industry and to the world and to our clients as well, and sharing those experiences and those challenges that we face, because together we're stronger, really. And I really, from the very beginning, it is, we are in this together. And I think it's about living that in terms of how you show up in your work world. And then for young people as well, making sure that their voices are heard, and making sure that we, through our own platform and Think House, and through how we advise our clients, that we're listening to the things that matter most to them. So from a Think House perspective, like, our services are very digitally and socially led. So I guess that is important.
Just very briefly, Jen, if you could just talk about the breadth of services, because it was something that really surprised me, because I saw you very much in the PR mold, which I was so wrong. It's a much broader marketing, digital kind of an offering, isn't that right?
Yeah, well, we break up our services in three words, three service areas, I suppose: fame, transformation, and then planet. So fame is everything from TV ads to cinema ads and outdoor advertising, but the bulk of it is really is PR and also social media. So we've active in the social media space for a very, very long time. So the brands that we work with either use all of our services or some of our services, depending on the requirements and the makeup of their agency roster as well. So yeah, really broad services. So that's the fame side of things, helping brands become famous. Where there's fame, fortune follows. Transformation, then helping brands and organizations transform by understanding the world, but looking at it through the lens of young people. So that might be the adoption of technology or a move into social and digital, which is a really common one, but it might also just be understanding what young people really care about and making sure that their workplace is ready for that, that their mindset is ready for that. Yeah. Brand behavior is ready for the next generation, helping them see around corners, really. And then planet is showing up in a way that is right for the next generation and is supportive of a better planet as well. So advising our clients and working with brands that are committed to growth in multiple ways, not just from a profit margin perspective, but in addition to that, supporting positive growth that doesn't cost the earth.
Okay, very good.
Three general areas. But from our perspective, I mean, we came out of the gates pretty fast. Our clients required our support quite quickly. We immediately, I think we shut the office on the Thursday and got a call from RTE on the Saturday to deliver a campaign that sends a very important message out to young people to stay at home at the very beginning. So the result was the RTE Create Don't Contaminate campaign that was delivered predominantly on social media, but also through TV. And it was a really fun campaign. It was a 14-day campaign. So actually, for the 14 days, we were fully immersed in bringing this campaign to life. Like, from getting the call to turning the campaign around, it was 2 days. But working with a phenomenal team in RTE to make that happen, and then delivering it through social and through influencer networks, and then through RTE on its TV channels, as well as a short ad that we updated over 14 days.
Yeah.
So quite intense, but it was really, really fun, and I think we were really privileged to be able to work with such an important campaign at such an early stage. So we're very, very proud of that. And then we worked on other really fast turnaround projects that were delivered mostly on digital and social and through PR as well for Lifestyle Sports. And we did the Pieta Darkness into Light campaign in partnership with Electric Ireland for Pieta House and with all of their agency partners as well. So again, work over the first 4 to 5 weeks that we're incredibly proud of, and that was really, really important. So I think as a team, we felt very rewarded, from the get in terms of the opportunities that we had to really important messages.
Very good, because as I say, I was taken aback in a really good way with the breadth of work and the amount of work, and also in the quality of materials that you're producing. So it was excellent. Okay, if we can go to the panel. Firstly, we'd like to talk about consumers, and we'll go to Luke first. Are they in the doldrums, as Jane was saying about the youth market and so on? Are they financially strapped? Are their heads down? Is there a lack of purchasing confidence? And all of that will impact into sellers, which is retailers and all sorts of retailers, businesses, and also therefore have an impact on advertising. So Luke.
Yeah, I suppose two points I suppose I'd make there. One is, I think we need to understand how people felt as they were heading into the crisis. So, because, a lot of the issues that we saw then still will manifest themselves again. So I think heading into the crisis, we saw that about half the population were merely getting by, yet about 1 in 8 were actually very cash strapped, and that they saw, I suppose, prices rising. And there was a lot of them felt they hadn't yet to benefit from the economy. And there was a sort of, if we looked at society, the middle classes, they couldn't see their aspirations being fulfilled. They were concerned about getting their house, renting. There was concerns around retirement, age. And then the more blue collar or working classes felt their voices didn't really matter. They were just people weren't communicating with them, and we saw that manifested in the election, which wasn't that far long ago, and this was before obviously COVID-19 struck, yeah. And then what happened? I suppose everything went into lockdown, literally in a sort of psychological lockdown, a state of fear, a state of shock. We're sort of in this sort of phony war zone at the moment, waiting to see what will happen. At the moment, people are pretty clued in. We did a study recently, actually with a COVID study for RTE, and on that study, like about 45% of the population felt that things wouldn't be back to normal till 2021, into next year, so they're pretty clued in. And also remember that a lot of people, this is their second recession, for some it's the third, so they've been through something like this before, so cast our mind back, being a little bit frugal about what we do and so forth. So it's interesting as well on that recent study, actually the RT COVID study, that the people are now less anxious about the virus, and their attention is turning towards the economy, turning towards when will there be a vaccine, or when will there be some form of treatment in that. And interesting that the younger individuals are even the most concerned about the global economy and that, So at the moment, the economic sentiment is at the doldrums, is at sort of May 2009 levels at this particular stage. So you have about 91% of people feel the economy worse than in the next 12 months. And that compares with about 76% in the UK from that global study we did, and about 56% in the USA.
Yeah.
But I suppose what is interesting is, I suppose just hot off the press, we did a piece of work for TAM Ireland, a tracking piece about reopening Ireland. And it's a tracking piece which we will continue to do over the next few months and that. And in phase one of that, I suppose what we're seeing is that, there are sort of green shoots, that there are people, if they're not spending on for example, groceries, as we see the latest figures go through the roof, they're containing, I suppose, their spending, and there's some cash being built up on that. And for people that are cancelling holidays, the appetite and the intention is to spend the money they have, or anything they saved in Ireland this year. The home and buying local is very much at their viewpoint. And I suppose that they want to treat themselves. So there's green shoots in this, I suppose, as we start to emerge out of this.
Well, I agree with you. Actually, the research I've seen on travel and tourism is about holding at home in order to support the economy, not necessarily the place you want to be. They are certainly ignoring the social distancing. I mean, just in my area, we're now in phase 56, I think, because it's all over. But is there an attitude to and they're dependent very much, Luke, on government handouts, the 350 kind of payment. Was there anything you came across in attitudes to government as the way government have behaved during COVID? Or did you come across that at all?
Yeah, and very, very strong support. And recent polls have echoed that. It has sort of ebbed and flowed throughout, but generally there's been a high level. As the plan came to fruition, I suppose there was, anxious. People wanted to get out there. Is there a loosening of I suppose the rules by people? Are people bending the rules? They are. That 5 kilometers is all of a sudden 8 kilometers. And the government is quite right. Relaxing is a lot. It's easier to lock something down. Opening something up psychologically it's further harder control. I do a lot of horse riding. You open the stable door, the horse bolts. That's it, gone. You'll never get. So it's harder. It's human psychology in terms of that. But generally, people are still appreciative of what the government has done. Certainly in terms of the HSE and obviously the government powers have done a very good job, and people are on board with that. But people want to get back, which is good for business. It's good for all of us. There's a market there to be marketed to. They want to be talked to. And it's kind of interesting what we're saying about in terms of the interest in COVID news. Certainly it is there. But as we move into, I suppose, brands and we start talking about our organizations, people want to change the dialogue. You know, they want to have a different interaction with us as they move forward. People forget they move on quickly. You know, and we're getting into that zone.
I just wonder, Luke, once the purse strings start to tighten, how much those attitudes will shift. Jane, you have a view in terms of the youth market. How have they got on, and how do you see consumer behaviour changing, or do you?
Yeah, I think it's already changed a lot over the last 12 weeks. From the Youth Lab, they describe it really in 3 words: connected, unstable, and confused is how young people are feeling. And I think generally, just listening to the young people that we listen to every day, it feels like COVID-19 has kind of put a sudden stop to their lives just when they were kind of starting their lives, or just as it was all beginning. There was lovely research done by Wunderman Thompson, and it's said that this is the most vulnerable generation in terms of anxiety. There's 10 times more anxiety than there was with that generation like 12 weeks ago, and we know we were already dealing with an epidemic of anxiety with young people as well. So we do know, like mental health, there is heightened anxiety that exists around the world, but that is heightened again with young people as well. And we know that from our work with PIEDA, and really important work with PIEDA over the last couple of weeks as well. And the number of calls coming in PIEDA has never been higher before. With the prediction around job losses, like they're 3 times more likely to lose their jobs or to be put on leave than any other generation. And they say that the Corona class of 2020 is at the most risk of unemployment, facing really long damage to their career and their pay prospects as well. So that said, it's very doom and gloom from a youth perspective, but they are living online more than ever over the COVID period, as you'd expect. There's some remarkable statistic backing that up. But they are escaping and using the internet to do that, to learn, to connect, and also to advocate for the things that they really, really care about. And some report came in recently from GWI, the Wave 2 research, and it said that spending hasn't stopped with this generation from an online perspective. Now, I'd expect with the financial constraints coming down the line for this generation, we will see that it will for sure slow down. But they say that the older people if you go like late 30s, I guess, that they're reporting an increase in spend in the early days of COVID. And maybe that was just a gut reaction early on. Who knows where it'll go from here?
I think that's going to change. It's actually, just to make a note, that it's great, because I came from a generation that never talked about mental health or wellness. It was an embarrassment to talk about it. So it's great to hear that is now, and it is really now, part of an open, and why shouldn't it be, an open and honest conversation. Jack, have you a view? Because we get you into this now about consumers in the doldrums and a bit of attitudes coming back and purchasing behavior.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at this industry over the last number of weeks. We've talked about advertising and marketing. Unfortunately, the business journalist in me knows that they don't operate in a bubble. Unfortunately, there are wider economic concerns out there that, if you just take the SRI report there last week, made for very grim reading, and it outlined 3, I suppose, scenarios, and the picture it painted was, it looked at a baseline scenario, a severe scenario, and I think the third one was a benign. And as economists do, they kind of went for the baseline one as opposed to the benign one. But anyway, bottom line was that I think it predicted, or was forecasting, that the GDP would drop by between 12 and 13% in 2020. And the severe case, I think it was 17%, and the benign case was like between 8 and 9%, right? So, I mean, if you look at that, and that's obviously made up of huge drops in consumption by consumers. It's obviously investment and exports and all of the other components. But the shocking thing was that it has an impact on the wider economy, is that the unemployment that was forecasting by the end of the year was up around, as I think it was 28% in April, thereabouts. So, but it was forecasting that by the end of the year, 17% of the population will be unemployed. That has huge repercussions for people's ability to spend. You know, if consumers aren't spending, it has a knock-on effect on all companies, on service providers, sellers of FMCG products, etc. And you know, that to me is a kind of a worrying thing that's out there. We're not really kind of talking about it. Yes, we're all hoping that the, you know, advertising and advertising and marketing do have a role in rebooting this economy. Of course they do, but there are huge issues that are out there, and they're in the kind of distance. We're not taking those into account. Now, having said that, again, the point I made earlier there before the webinar kicked off was, you know, a lot is going to hinge on how the government responds to this, you know, and any stimulus package that it creates to, I suppose, reboot the economy, because the economy does need to be rebooted. And you know, Ireland is not unique in this respect. Every economy in the Western world needs to be rebooted, but we can only, you know, I suppose, worry or talk about our own economy, and you know, there are some, you know, positive signals coming from Europe in particular, that, you know, it's we're in this together, and you know, in terms of the ability of the Irish government to draw down on EU funds, whether it's in terms of loans or grants or whatever. But there is a general consensus which has been reached now in Europe that yes, we need to do something extraordinary to try and reboot the European economy. So below all of that, then you have the various sectors within the Irish economy that need, you know, to be rebooted. Everything from travel and tourism to hospitality. There's a whole, you know, I don't know if anybody was watching this prime time last night about the, you know, tourism and hospitality sector in particular. You know, the reality is there's a lot of pubs being not open again. There's some hotels are going to struggle, and you know, these businesses, many of them are SMEs. They've been the lifeblood of the Irish economy for years to come. Yes, we pat ourselves on the back about our prowess when it comes to FDI, or foreign direct investment, but the reality is, you know, the vast majority of businesses in Ireland are SMEs.
Yes.
And they need to be rebooted. They need to employ people, you know, and they also need people to come in and be able to spend in, you know, whether it's in a pub, whether it's in a hotel, whether it's a leisure centre, or the small local retailer.
Yeah.
So there's so many different factors at play and so many unknowns still out there. And I think we really need to see some, you know, clear, joined up thinking coming from the government as to where, you know, what is the blueprint, you know, however, it pans out. We do need to see, and the business community, all, you know, ISME and Small Firms Association and IBEC have all come up with, by and large, relatively sensible proposals to reboot the economy. But we've yet to see anything from government, apart from the various incentives that it has in place at the moment to keep people in employment and you know, ensure that that they have money coming in on a weekly or monthly basis. So now is the time, as businesses prepare to reopen, I think, you know, we need to see something a little bit more concrete coming from the government.
The only thing I do get a sense of, the anxiety amongst younger people, because I'm going to go to Mick now, which is also about the gap widening between rich and poor, and that what we're tending to do is to give billions of grants to large companies and largely to the directors who pay them out in dividends to their fellow directors, whereas at the lower end, or even at a middle class end, that people are now going to struggle more. And there is a sense of that divide widening, and the government being maybe in the throes of business organizations who tend to be looking after themselves rather than necessarily looking after the people. And that sense of revolution, I don't know, I just get a sense of it, I think is reflected. And that's why it's a very, very, very smart link to go to Mick McCaffrey, because I think you might be seeing that in the protests in the United States. I think it is about Black Lives Matter, but I also think it's about anger. I also think it's about youth unemployment. I also think it's about Trump. I also think it's about the sense of an American economy that is faced with 24 million, 34 million people unemployed who are going hungry. There is a sense of that. But can I ask you, Mick, just as a news, and this is much for my interest, because I say we're all ex-Sky and ex-CNN and ex-everything else, and the lads here, Al Jazeera, or TG Car, which is about as rough a TV news organisation as you can get. But the lads who were saying they had never seen the treatment of news journalists on the ground like they saw in New York, and where they're punched in the face by policemen, where they're putting this cordon up and everything else. Would you concur with that, or what do you feel about that?
Oh, absolutely. But, in many ways, it's no surprise. Donald Trump has been billing journalists and media as enemies of the people for the last 4 years. So this is personifying that message. Never before have I seen journalists singled out by police, even though the fact that they're clearly identified as press, carrying their press credentials. And it's not happening in isolation in one city. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of cases of it. It's really, really disturbing.
Did you see the news crew doing a live? They were doing a live for CNN, and they were arrested as when they were on air.
Oh, it's unbelievable, and this has not happened by accident. It seems to be that they're actually being targeted. It's unbelievable, but it is. There's a deeper problem there, as you said. But what I'm really heartened about in Ireland is over the last 12 weeks is the amount of young people that are actually watching television news. It's up 87% year on year, which is fantastic. It's an audience that traditionally would never have watched TV news, and they're engaged with this in many cases for the first time. So I think the secret there is to try to keep them interested and keep them engaged, and that's what we have to try to do as media organizations. Just another point, yesterday we officially launched what we call a backing business program in Virgin Media, where we're giving €1 million to small businesses affected by COVID-19. The interest in that has been absolutely phenomenal. And I just think there's so many small business owners around Ireland just waiting for a chance to get back in business. And I do think we're entering a new phase next Monday, even psychologically, where people can go from 5 kilometres to 20 kilometres. And hopefully that will start to loosen the purse strings and people might be willing to spend more money. But I do think next Monday will be very significant potentially.
And is there going to be a continual focus on news, and particularly the 5:30? The 5:30 is a smashing show, Mick, and he gets in half an hour before RTE, which is terrific. But in that, from your sense, I'm not giving it about RTE, is there going to be continual drive on news and continual drive now as sport gets back and to keep that audience there?
Oh, 100%. And we've been very good during this crisis. Whenever there's an important press conference, we always take it live and give people an opportunity to see it. And we're very much focused on digital as well. We've got the Gavin Riley's, the Richard Chambers, the Zara Kings, journalists who are very influential digitally. I think last week I saw Gavin Riley was the most influential journalist on Twitter, but that's a hugely important market segment, and people who traditionally don't go to television or read newspapers. So it's important that we're hitting them. So, I think our new managing director, Paul Farrell, is very interested in expanding our digital footprint, and I think that's really going to be important.
Well, he came from, I worked with him in O2, so he knows digital very well. Just again, be conscious of time. I told you it would fly. Just very quickly, with keeping that in mind as well, about what I might perceive as anger, and I'm not sure. I'll go to you first, Luke, but that as things, I know what you're saying about research at the moment, but as things change, as purse strings tighten, and particularly amongst the youth audience, you might start to get that. We saw a huge protest in Dublin over Black Lives Matter on the weekend. But just very quickly, Luke, if you can, because I'd like to get around to everybody again, what will new normal look like? I mean, from a business point of view, and from a consumer's point of view, and indeed from an advertiser's point of view.
Yeah, well, I'll get my crystal ball out. It's like, I suppose one of the interesting things we saw recently was that only about 29% of people want everything to go back to the way it was pre-COVID. So it's almost.
Sorry, like 29. Is that what you said?
Only 29%. 70% of people wanted to change, so they didn't want their lives to go back to the way they were. So it's almost like COVID-19 is a potential catalyst of change. Some of this was already in motion. It was alluded earlier on about the environment, for example, but other social issues as well that makes it obviously discussed here as well. So I think it's those issues were there previously, but all of a sudden people are looking at their lives and reevaluating. And interesting enough, it's around the millennial generation is actually the ones that are looking at it most. Not saying the other generations aren't as well, but they're of all the ones. And if you think about that generation, it spans people who are single versus also who are with kids and that, and they're all just pulled, and the tensions are huge there in terms of their lives and that. And so there's a yearning for a better quality of life, and I think people have taken stock over the last couple of weeks about life. The rat race the rise of tech. They're understanding, I suppose, the positives and the negatives a little bit more. Jane was talking there about younger people in terms of, in terms of anxiety and depression, that obviously being glued to technology is one of the aspects that you see as you look down the ages. But obviously appreciation, I suppose, of the rise of technology, the good points, the bad points. We're likely to see, I suppose, online shopping, online entertainment. We see the rise of Disney Plus. We see normal people. We see all of these great shows and that coming through very strongly through this crisis, and that's likely to continue as well. There's going to be a heightened, I suppose, interest in home. We're going to be spending more time at home, less commuting, more home working is going to be here to stay, or a hybrid approach of that. And I think that's going to be so our interiors. Like I'm talking, we did a staff survey as well, Jane, and it was great. We had our laptops, we had our tech. We forgot about the chairs. We forgot about the desk. We forgot about the ambience. We forgot that people live in bedrooms or on kitchens and that. And I can't build them new houses. I'm not Google. I can't give them £1,000 to redecorate their house or get a new chair and that. But, all of those sort of things now are playing out in that. And I think, people will want treats and rewards. John talked about that level of unemployment. That is coming down the line. That's what I'm talking about, the phony war. And we have to understand that, and that's 1980s levels, It's
1920s, Luke.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, when you get to 16, 17%, at the end of the year and that. So I think that's important, to consider. So the online piece, and I said the final point I'll make is that the offline piece will be very important. So I think that the importance of the physical environment is going to be so crucial as we emerge out of this. Yes, we'll appreciate online and digital, but we want to get into a cafe. How we actually, as brands and organizations, deal with that and cater for that is going to be massive.
That's very, very, very interesting. Now, Jane.
Yeah, I
think the new normal. What is the new normal? And again.
Well, you're right. Certainly missing physical touch, like the numbers and the viewership and things like Pornhub has just gone through the roof. I think they're up by 25%. People are spending more time online. There's only a certain amount of that will last, I think. People are exercising more, sleeping more, meditating more. So all of these things are going to become habits and ingrained in our behaviors. But I do think, the new normal or a return to normal, there's very few people want a return to normal. I think this is a time of reset. This is a time where we can actually take what we have learnt over the last 12 weeks about nature, about community, about family, about culture, about resetting our lives and setting a normal that we all aspire to and want to. And I think we're in a really privileged position, those of us who are responsible for guiding the future of brands and of organizations, to see what we've learned and take what we've learned and apply that. And the purpose disruptors, who are a group of marketing people that have come together around the world to really act on climate change, have said that this is the great reset. And actually Greta Thunberg, last night I was watching on CNN, had a great quote. She said, the pandemic has made scientists step up. It's made people realize that we have to listen to the scientists. This is good for the climate crisis. So I think we have a new future. For me, it's really, really exciting. After the Roaring 20s, we had after the Spanish flu, we had the Roaring 20s. And this was an era of bright young things and the tremendous creativity that emerged in that period. And I think we will have the Roaring 20s again, roaring about injustice. We can see that, roaring about our planet, roaring about the systemic injustices that exist within society.
See, that's the anger. That's the anger I'm talking about, and in a positive way. I mean that with absolute affection. And also, I think people are reluctant. Anybody I'm talking, they hate to see the cars going back. They hate to see the smokes coming out of the chimneys. They hate to see the airplanes in the air, because they're seeing fresh air, they're seeing distance, they're seeing sun and weather and all. But it's that kind of anger. I think that's.
I think we're seeing that and we're feeling that now, and it's a passion for a better world.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the way of articulating it, and I think we are all in a privileged position where we can listen to those voices and see where we can act.
Absolutely. Mick, the new normal. How are things going to change for news? More pooling. Are you going to be sharing the plinth with RTE?
Well, I don't want to see 30 people in the newsroom again, that's for sure. And I think there's almost a perception before this that if you're working from home that you're on the DOS. And I think what the last 3 months has shown is that, you know, you can work just as effectively from home and not have to go through the traffic, you know, and, you know, getting your work-life balance, I think, is important as well. Look, collaboration is going to be the new norm for us. We're already doing it, actually. COVID's been fantastic for that. The RT and us example. RT pooled the morning press conference at the Department of Taoiseach. We pooled the evening one with Dr. Tony Houlihan. I've been talking to my counterpart, John Williams, far more than I ever would have during the last few months. We have an editors group where the heads of news, television and radio are talking with the national newspaper editors. So we're there to support each other, help each other. It's a small industry and we're going to be going through a difficult time over the next short term to medium term. You have to help each other. You have to collaborate, and, you know, it makes sense.
100%. Jack, the new normal, the way things are changing. The unprecedented, precedented, or whatever.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things to come out of all of this is the increased push towards digital. I think that'll manifest itself probably obviously in consumer behavior. And I use my 17-year-old daughter as a guinea pig, and I look at her consumption habits and how they have changed over the last 12 weeks, and, you know, everything. You know, more online purchases from the likes of prettylittlething.com or boohoo.com, an opportunity there for an Irish retailer to get in on that space, I would have thought, rather than ordering from a large UK website. But across the board, in general, I think digital, and, you know, this Martin Sorrell came out there the other day and said it as well, that, you know, more and more brands now are pushing into digital. Plans that they may have had for 2021 are now being rolled out and executed in 2020, and you're going to see more of that. And you're going to see, you know, for agencies and how they deal with their clients, they're going to really need to embrace the digital part of it. Yes, they all offer you know, digital services, but I think in terms of how they deliver services and how things, if anything can be digitized, it should be digitized. I think also in
would you
terms
say
of
including advertising, John McGee, by any chance?
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Good. So you'd be talking about Admatic in that case then?
Well, yeah, that's absolutely, yeah. And there may be well, listen, you know, when Facebook was born in the last recession, you know, so there's a whole kinds of new opportunities. And if it is going to be a big reset, well, you know, it's you know, it's all to play for. So whether it's a new agency coming up with a new offering, or whether it's a company like Admatic, or whether it's another service provider, it doesn't really matter. But I think also in terms of, you know, from a media owner perspective, yes, digital is going to continue, and you can see a lot of that happening already in terms of what the news organizations are planning. Mick mentioned, you know, the increased push into digital and it's eminently sensible. You know, we're all doing it. I think, you know, we will see more and more people consuming content and news and features online, and that's, you know, that's a given. So I think that from our point of view, and, you know, and as I said, as a publisher's perspective, digital is where it's at. And that sounds, you know, it's a bit cliched, and we've been saying that for the last kind of 10 years in our industry, and we've been slowly moving in that direction. But I think now is the time. And for news organizations that don't embrace digital 100%, well then, you know, you've got to question their viability in the future.
Well, I mean, it's an argument I've been making for a long time, and it's what Admatic does. So forgive me for the business bit, but you can buy an ad in Twitter in your kitchen right now and be live on Twitter in 5 minutes, or live on Facebook, or live on LinkedIn. I can't buy a spot on a radio station. I can't buy a press ad in a newspaper.
That's a structural problem within the industry. You know,
it's a digital issue, though. It's solved by digital.
It's a digital issue. But the structure of the industry and the media buying industry in particular, you know, doesn't permit that, or doesn't allow it. It's not set up to do that. You know. So
thanks very much, Jack. Remember, I can mute you at any time. Just if I could go around, we've 5 minutes. So very quickly, if we can start again with Luke. If we just could have some words of wisdom, anything that you might say that might be a bit encouraging, or, you know, people are concerned about there because common or garden businesses are running out of cash. We have the reduction, I think it's next week, in the 350 and the furlough scheme, or the changes, whatever those changes are going to be. But just if you could give us just say to get around to 5, you only have 5 minutes left. Just a quick sense of words of wisdom, Luke Reaper.
Well, I suppose in general, I suppose I think it's about don't go dark out there. Stay connected to customers, clients. We talked about collaboration. I think collaboration's here to stay. I think it's time for real connections as well, and plan. I would say it, but research. Innovate and hit the ground running. For whatever green shoots there are, be prepared for it, because people will come out. There will be, it will be a different environment. It's likely to be a frugal consumer. So being prepared and understanding what's out there is important.
Jay McDade.
I'll say something that I always say, which is listen to young people, because they actually are a shortcut to the future. I would also say, the roaring 20s are here. Bring on the roar. Nobody roars better than the marketing and advertising industry. And let's make sure that we're being really useful in how we show up in the world.
Okay, Mick?
I just think journalism is more important than ever now. And I think the future is trust, credibility, independence, impartiality. I just think that is going to be so important over the next.
Impartiality.
Be impartial, independence, credible. It's just
okay.
People are tired of fake news. They're tired of Facebook misinformation. I just think real, credible news is just going to become so more important in everyone's lives, be it digital or linear or newspapers.
Can you just very quickly just explain that a bit more, in the sense that people are going to go back to traditional values, so they're going to go back to trusted media sources, which is obviously especially for news. Is that what you mean? I
think so, yeah. I think if you look at the start of the COVID-19, you had so much misinformation being spread on Facebook, on WhatsApp, real bad information that caused a lot of damage in many ways. And I just think people want real news that they can trust and know that they're going to a credible organization. I think it's going to be a real push against fake news. And I think what you see in the States at the moment is very worrying, and which we need to make sure in Ireland that we continue to invest in journalism and journalists.
It surely is to have a president of the United States standing outside the church holding a Bible. I mean, great photo op, nailed it, I don't think. John?
Yeah, I think, we need to continue to find new ways of working, not just for our own business, but working with clients. And, I think it's important that, we have, I suppose, an unrelenting focus on solving some of the challenges and issues that clients have. I think in this industry, we pat ourselves on the back too much and say, oh yes, we're good at helping clients, but to really understand the challenges, we need to get in there and get our hands dirty, roll up our sleeves, and actually work with our clients and demonstrate, I suppose, the power of advertising, demonstrate that the power of advertising, and it works. And Mick's point is hugely important as well in terms of the trust and credibility. As a journalist myself, I despair at some of the content and that I've seen online over the last 12, 13 weeks. It's shocking. I think it's time that the platforms that disseminate or facilitate the dissemination of content like this misleading content need to be hauled in. I'm glad to see the likes of Twitter hauling in Trump on his tweets. I think that's a first step. I think the other platforms, particularly Facebook, need to follow suit. But trust and credibility, in my view, will always win out. And I think also brands need to align themselves more with sources that are trustworthy and credible. And that's not always happening in this market, because there's the lion's share of advertising and spend is going towards these platforms that are not trustworthy. So I think brands probably need to sort of stand back and say, well, what are we doing? Where are we spending our money? Are we supporting platforms that are spreading hatred and malicious gossip and rumors and whatever? We need to take a stand on this. And I think you will see, as brands develop a sense of purpose and maybe reboot their own kind of marketing strategies. I think this is time maybe to sort of look at where is good for us to be advertising? What platforms should we be advertising? Should we be supporting, TV more or press more than, are we putting too much money into Facebook and Google? And I think there's a reset needed in terms of strategy, brand strategy, and maybe this might be the time to consider it.
I must say, I've never heard that conversation so many times as I have in the last 12 weeks. I definitely think that's a change that's going to come. I let it run over a little bit because everybody got started a bit late. It's 2 p.m. That's a wrap. Thank you very much, Jane. Thank you very much, Luke. Thank you very much, Mick. And thank you very much, John McGee. Thank you all for watching again. Hopefully we'll be back next week, but with holidays and everything else, and with maybe if people are away, we might leave it for a week, but we want to do an advertiser, isn't that right, Jack? Show more than anything else. But look, I'm very grateful, and just in the true advertising fashion, if you can just very coolly wave, like not like a bad wave, just a gentle wave, and say goodbye. Thank you all extremely very much. Thanks very much, Mick. Wish you well. Okay, cheerio.
Cheers.